This is a CW Spiral, a podcast run by two Barchies and a Bughead. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network, the latest news, and in-depth spoiler-filled discussions of some of our favorite shows on the CW. This should be an interesting podcast because we don't have much to talk about. CW delivered most of its news. We're all just waiting for fall TV to come, even though fall TV is going to be hilariously different when starting September and October. But we do want to circle back to talking about the Emmys, which we haven't discussed. But we're talking about it because, and I know this comes as no surprise to anyone, Miss Bitsie Tulloch was not on the nomination list because CW always gets snubbed, but she does deserve an Emmy. And since Michael is back, Michael, the floor is yours.
We knew we'd have this conversation at some point because this kind of genre is constantly overlooked at award shows, and the CW itself is constantly overlooked at award shows. So yeah, on that element, it's absolutely no surprise, but that doesn't make it any less disappointing, outrageous, choose whichever adjective you want. The work Bitsie Tulloch delivered in this season of Superman Lois in particular has just been incredible. I know we all constantly say what an amazing actress she is, but the grounded, realistic, emotional performance she delivered as Lois went through her cancer journey this season was just, it's not the kind of performance or storyline you'd see in shows like this, and she absolutely knocked it out of the park. It was grounded, it was emotional, and I feel like I know season 3 divided some audiences, but I feel like if there was one thing that brought everyone together, it was just the praise on her performance, because it was just absolutely stunning. And like I said, we're used to being stunned by her, but I just kind of wish she got this acknowledgement because she deserves it. She absolutely deserves it. It wasn't just an awareness-raising performance. It was a powerful performance. It was one that like stood out in a show so full of like family drama and CGI, whereas this just felt so authentic. And I could heap praise on it all day. Certainly now because the Emmys won't. It's just she deserves the acknowledgement. She deserved the recognition for that. And I do think this performance will go down in history as one of the greatest the genre has ever seen. So I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge it because she was just amazing, right?
She was fantastic. I mean, it's mind-blowing. I think, we can get a little jaded sometimes when it comes to storylines in which someone is sick, because usually that is what gets someone an award, right? Because it's peak drama. I feel like a lot of times when there is a storyline where someone is sick, regardless of what they're sick with, that is the moment. That's their moment to really show you what they're going to give. But I've never seen that be done in a superhero show. Probably will never see it be done again in a superhero show. I know, again, like you mentioned, Michael, the fandom was divided on the cancer storyline, but I also think that like since they had done it, like she truly leaned in to the various layers of playing a role that way. I mean, it fully encapsulated all of the elements that embody Lois, and it having lost there, like from being a world famous journalist to being a mom, to being a wife, to being a friend, to not feeling like herself and trying to reclaim herself again. I'm just like in awe of what Bitsie brought to the table. And the writing, of course, helps, but we've discussed that actors really do elevate writing. Like you could have excellent writing that the actor can't rise to the occasion. It just falls flat. And that was not the case for Bitsie Tulloch. And I don't think it'll ever be the case for Bitsie Tulloch. She's one of the best actresses on TV right now.
Without a doubt. And
No, you go, Michael.
Yeah, I literally was just going to finish the sentence saying we've been moved to tears constantly, and that would not have happened had she not delivered that performance, because that was just amazing.
And we need, like, jumping off that, we need a secondary award show that is as prestigious as the Emmys. Not to say that she is not deserving an Emmy, because she is, but there's clearly just not enough room in this Academy. Just continues to ignore certain performances. We need like a secondary award show that's not the Critics' Choice, that's not the Golden Globes, that's like not the SAG. Like we just need something where like genre shows can have their moment and shows that don't get their moment and performances that don't get their moment can have an award show where they get more than a surfboard as a trophy. Like we need something else. So this is my campaign. If she's not going to get an Emmy, we're going to create a show where she can get something like an Emmy that's as golden and shiny.
You know
And
what we
again,
need?
not styrofoam.
We need like broadcast TV awards or something. Like, because that used to be the Emmys, but like everyone is obsessed with streaming now, or it's like I guess technically HBO's broadcast, but I mean the big five, like the CBS, the CW, NBC, ABC, Fox. Their actors get ignored. Like
Yeah, now.
except for Abbott Elementary, of course, who's the outlier. But like much of TV that people watch, fabulous teary performances that leave you just sniffling on the couch, but not a lot of recognition unless it's a drama like This Is Us.
Even procedurals get ignored too now.
And they've been doing some great work on there. I mean, I know
Yeah.
people like, aren't as into procedurals because they feel like, oh yeah, but you don't have to follow the storyline all the way. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're not acting their behinds off on their shows because they are.
It is unfortunate that when you look back at all the old Emmy nominations from previous years gone by, and you see all the network TV, I think on it, that's just now when you look at that in comparison, and it's just like we said, the streaming industry has taken over a lot, but when you see that all the network television is essentially getting ignored at a ceremony that was created for network television, that's just really sad to think about. And now the CW never really broke into that category, like Jane the Virgin aside. So it's unfortunate that it continues to get overlooked. And I know what you mean, Reed, because we do have the thing like the likes of the Saturn Awards, which was specifically created to appreciate science fiction and genre TV. But why do we have to create a completely separate offshoot? Where is the middle ground there? Where is the middle ground where the shows we sit down to watch at nighttime and flick on our televisions and get moved by every single night of the week? Why are they not getting appreciated anymore? And these cinematic spectacles, which I do love, admittedly, which arrive maybe every 2 months, 3 months, once a year, maybe, they keep getting nominated at the Emmys. It's like the Emmys have essentially turned into television's version of the Oscars. And I mean that in more ways than literally one, because television's kind of changed into movie shows quality, like, and that's not the same thing as television. I just wish there was more in between stage that television could get the recognition it deserves, because network TV actors are probably the hardest working actors in the business because they have to produce between 15 to 22 episodes a season. And not to take away from anyone who does 8 episodes or 10 episodes of event shows, but I just feel like television was a completely different thing than film. Now the line's been blurred, and the original sense of what TV is getting overlooked at award shows like this. And like we don't have to look any further than the Emmys or even Superman and Lois's lack of a nomination this year.
But see, this is why I personally championed the year when Emily in Paris was nominated for Outstanding Comedy Series. I know this is a streaming show, not really what we're talking about, but everyone was like, "How did that show get nominated? It's not good." And I'm like, I, I, I loved it. Did it deserve it? I don't know. It's not my decision to make, but I like that there was a seat at the table for a show that was, I don't believe in the term guilty pleasure, but a guilty pleasure. Like, it's not, it's not Severance, it's not Succession. It's a romantic comedy. And I'd never seen a show like that be nominated after year. Like, I've always wanted Younger to be nominated because in its heyday, Younger was amazing. And it's the same creator, same like tone. And just seeing a show that one I love, that is in the genre that I love, finally be recognized alongside all of these like highbrow streaming hits that have taken over the comedy category. I was like, yes, we should be celebrating the fact that they opened up this category to a show that is unlike everything else. I thought it was so cool. And nobody agreed with me, and nobody still does. It still feels like a fever dream that Emily in Paris is ever Emmy nominated. But like, I thought it was so cool. Like but nothing has changed since then. Like, nothing is really in the same way. Like, I don't think a show that I guess lowbrow has been welcomed back in, but I thought it was so cool. I thought it was going to be like, oh, maybe now shows that people secretly love but say they hate watch is gonna like they're gonna be Emmy nominated. No, not like nothing, no doors were opened for other kinds of shows. But I
It's
was so excited when that happened and no one agreed.
it's frustrating though because like this should be room made for others. Everything doesn't have to be prestige. Like I'm so like that's the part that's exhausting. So I understand why you'd be excited for Emily in Paris because it's not a prestige show. It's not a prestige comedy. We're just having fun. Actually, I feel like having seen some of it, that show could have been on network TV and like earlier on and would have done fabulously, still doing fabulously on streaming, but it just feels like it would have totally made sense in like the 2000s era. But I really want, and perhaps this is controversial, I need everybody to stop acting like all the prestigious shows are good. They just got a lot of money with fancy people in it, with fancy titles. And I mean, are a lot of them good? Yes, but just because it's airing on HBO doesn't mean it should be considered a hit. Or just because like everybody's talking about it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. I get a little like I don't like the way that people talk about the shows that air on like the big five. Like it feels very much like, being in high school when everyone's like developing their music taste and suddenly they don't like pop music anymore. Suddenly the thing that you were like bouncing around to is like the
Oh,
worst thing you ever heard. And I was like, you were just listening to it a month
oh,
ago,
do I
which
have
you
stories with that?
right?
I had a teacher in high school. This is way off track. I had a point I'll circle back to if I remember it. I feel like I already lost it. But I had a teacher in high school where we were doing like this exercise where we had to name like an artist or something. And I said Avril Lavigne. And mind you, Avril Lavigne still putting out music today in 2023, still is putting out music. It was like 2011. And she was like, "You still like Avril Lavigne?" This is a teacher. She was like, "You still like Avril Lavigne?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "But why wouldn't you grow out of that?" And I'm like, "Well, some things you don't grow out of. You like them and you like them forever." And I've had that conversation with so many people. Like, I remember the show What I Like About You. I bought the first season DVD when I was younger, and my dad was like, "You're gonna grow out of that." No, no, I didn't. Amanda Bynes is hilarious. Let me live. And just like that, I forgot my other thought that I had. That was actually relevant.
Oh man, no! Listen, so many people told me I'd grow out of Batman, comic books, wrestling, and here I am, biggest nerd in the room, in my family today. You never grow out of things like that, but like to the on the like television point of how it's kind of like evolved over time. That's why I love seeing WandaVision get nominated for the Emmys because don't get me wrong, seeing a Marvel show get nominated, I was screaming. I was so happy about it. But on the other end of things, it took its cues from I Dream of Jeannie. It took its cues from Bewitched and The Brady Bunch, other sitcoms of classic days gone by that you would have seen nominated at the Emmys back in the day. Whereas now it just feels like television has just become movies on TV. And I don't want that. I want television to look, act, and sound like television. I think you just thought of a thought, Reed. So over
You
to you.
you dislodged the thought. You brought it back with what you were saying. Mind you, some of the most popular shows on streaming services are from network TV. You're still watching Friends. You're still watching The Office. Suits, which is not network TV, it's cable, is one of the top shows currently in the Netflix top 10 and has been for a few weeks. So there's a demand for these shows that are older. So why are people ignoring them currently when they're still being produced in, I would even argue, at a higher quality, if not the same quality as the shows that we loved back in the day? So there's a lot of questions swirling around that we're never going to get answers to. But I mean, I love how this all stemmed from Bitsie Tulloch deserves an Emmy.
Because it's like
It stems all the larger issues in the industry.
yes, we could talk for hours about the state of television and the way in which people have sort of uplifted streaming in a way that diminishes like network TV and cable. People are being weird. I feel like sometimes they don't even know the show that they're watching isn't even a streaming show. They're like, but it's such good quality. And it's like, yes, because it's not like streaming invented good quality television.
New Amsterdam was one of the bigger shows on Netflix last year, and I wanted to whisper in some of the people's ear, like, this is on NBC, right? This is from NBC. It's not just some like random show that popped up on Netflix.
I feel like people don't, and I feel like because they're like listing all their streaming shows. And I'm like, yes, those are fantastic, but this other show that you're watching over here was a network TV show. It just finished, or its new season is premiering in the fall. Like what? Like yes, if you still had cable, you could just flip on the TV and watch it weekly if you wanted to. I promise you, you would get the same experience.
And just because there's more episodes and maybe there's a filler one, does it make it less good?
Mm-mm.
You know, because I
Less
feel
good. Forgive me.
But I just so there's this thing that people like, and I think this is what some of the arguments are about for in the writer's strike, which the writers are really trying hard to be able to save the business so that the studios don't go like, oh, but you could like make a 6-episode season or an 8-episode season with just you and an assistant. And they're like, no, I can't. But like
Nobody wants that anyway.
nobody wants that. But we also like one of the things I think one of the drawbacks about streaming television shows is that, you know, in its heyday and in some of its time now too, is it was a playground with like no rules. So they're like, oh, you know what? I have an 8-episode story I want to do. There's no like runtime that I have for each episode. They're all going to be different. And I was like, what you need is parameters.
Parameters.
Yeah.
We need to have that conversation because I'm watching some of these shows, streaming shows, and I'm like, what did the outline look like? I need to see it.
Like so we really do because they're like, oh, we can totally do like we're gonna go from a 32-minute episode to a 65-minute episode. And it's
Yeah,
like
I was going to say that. Yeah.
you don't actually need to do that. We don't actually need that many shots of the woods or someone running. I promise
Yeah.
you can
There's
edit it
something
out.
to be said about building a story toward act breaks and having structure. Like sometimes, when you watch those shows, you can feel the structure, and to me, that's comforting because we've watched so many of those shows for broadcasts where it's like they build toward the ad breaks, and like you can see the structure building, and you can tell how far you into an episode. And removing that sometimes can help you just like experience an episode. But when it's so loosey-goosey that it feels like there's no like distinguished acts, like there's really no like we learned in school how to build a story, like it's the mountain and then it goes down. Sometimes it's just like a small little bump and it's like like what happened in this episode, I don't know.
Right.
And because they're streaming shows or cable shows, and they're basically like what, a 6-part, 10-part movie. Like you don't have to reach like the inciting incident until episode 2, or like the midpoint until episode 4. Like I know to go back to Marvel, I know there's a show that we've talked about before that you were a fan of a certain actor of Reed, and you tried watching the first episode off, and you thought it was way too slow because it was
2 episodes. I suffered through 2.
All right, I'm so sorry about that.
Give me more credit, Michael.
I'm so sorry I put you through that. I'm joking. But yeah, 6-part movie is not the
Just
same
make
thing
the
as
damn
television.
movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
That's what I'm screaming at some
Yeah.
of these miniseries. I'm like, why did movies exist still?
Yeah, exactly. And that show in particular would have worked as a movie. But that's it. There's no parameters anymore. Like, and even yeah, you could have a show that really starts ramping up in the back 5 episodes. You're like, well, then where was all this in the first 5 episodes? Because remember that old network TV trope, you gotta hook people right at the beginning, otherwise they'll not tune in. And it just feels like now that you've got big actors attached to projects, big budgets on big cable networks, you expect people to stick with it the whole way through, and that's not always the way it works out.
Yeah, and they're dropping the hook sometimes at the end of episode 2 or 3, and I'm like, no. When you're selling a pilot, the hook is, in those first 45 minutes. Like I remember that show Revenge, which is one of the best shows ABC ever put out, maybe one of like the last of that really good ABC era. Although that's a broad statement. Let me run that back because I don't know what ABC's up to nowadays. But I remember I watched the show Happy Endings, and it was they put Revenge after their comedy block, which neither here nor there. Just weird.
They're still doing stuff like that, by the way. It's terrible.
So you put a high concept soap opera behind a comedy. Interesting choices, but it got me to watch because I wasn't going to watch Revenge, and I just like didn't turn ABC off after Happy Endings. I'm like, what is this show? And by like 10 minutes in, I was hooked because like that's what you got to do. And now they just like meander, and they know that if they drop a full season or 3 episodes, they've got you. You're gonna you're gonna keep watching until it gets good, because that's what the vibe is now. Is like, oh, it gets good in episode 3, and I'm like, I don't want it to get. I need it to be good from like 10 minutes in. That's what I need. And I, not to toot my own horn, but I always know within like the first 5 minutes, like if the vibe is off, like I can feel it. I don't know if everybody is that tuned into their own like taste, but like I can tell like within the first 5 minutes if a movie or show is like, this isn't going to be for me, and I know I'm going to struggle. Or conversely, I know like, okay, I'm going to rock with this. This is for me.
I think with the this is not obviously a CW show, but I feel like people were surprised by Night Agent and how like successful it was. But Night Agent follows the same formula as broadcast television does. They hit you in the face immediately. And the showrunner is the SWAT creator, right? Yeah. Or the SWAT showrunner. So he understands how you get people into the story. I always feel like some people I think are used to like, if it's a binge, I don't mind suffering through like a half hour of episodes or 3 hours of episodes until it gets good. And I was like, I do though. Like I'm still a cable girl. Like I need to be able to understand what's happening in your show right off the bat. Like as soon as someone tells me, oh, but by episode, they was like, oh, then I'm not watching. I'm not like, I can't, you want me to invest time? There's so much TV. I could be watching something else. And be really invested.
If I don't know the characters' names by the end of episode 1, we have an issue. And it happens so often now. I feel like broadcasts, we grow up and we hear they use the names in every scene. I'm like, it's season 4. I know who she is. You don't need to say, what are you thinking about? Insert name here. I'm like, I got it. We're here. Streaming shows, no names. I'm like, who are you? I don't know.
I know I don't feel so bad, or I feel kind of bad now for going on about how Riverdale kept doing, you know what, B? Yeah, you're right, V. Back and forth.
They whack you over the head with it. And I'm like, no one talks like that.
They're going to know these characters by the end of this episode.
But you know what? I think that's better than not giving us the character names at all.
I know, just so confused. Or they say, you're watching it and they say Bradley's name once every 30 minutes. So you're just like,
who's Bradley?
Who's Bradley?
Who's Bradley? Fighting for my life on IMDb.
You know? Oh God, we do have to have a major TV, like we didn't just have one now, but like a major TV talk on a pod episode because
we've had a like a rant cast planned, and I think we just did the pilot for it.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Bitsie. We love you.
I know we love you so much. Which moving into like another fabulous actress, Kennedy McMahon. Who update on The Good Lawyer for anyone who is still concerned. It is still in limbo. They are not pulling it back out yet. I think it's a good chance of survival, I guess, if we're still waiting. I feel like at this point, I mean, they should say something. Rookie Feds is also sitting around. They don't know what they're doing with that one, but the contracts are extended on that and home economics. I wonder if ABC will make a decision once we get closer to the fall. I just want to know if we're going to get it.
They are on my last nerve. And I know what I said last week, Sabrina, about the whole strike thing and like keeping perspective, but I am losing patience. I really am. Riding my last nerve.
I know, like every time they bring up like ABC still hasn't decided. I'm like, TV line though. I'm assuming this means that you checked again and they told you it's still in limbo.
Please stop telling me that it's still in. Like, just tell me when the decision is made. Please stop. No progress reports.
I feel like they should just say something though. Like I know the actors are striking, but that has nothing to do with like whether either you're going to move forward with this new show or you're not. Like whether they're striking or not, you know what you want to do. Just tell us.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving to Nancy Drew, which is a prime example of not only classic CW, as you said, Reed, yesterday, but also what we're talking about like television structure and why it can be so exciting. I mean, their first commercial break is the body swap, is it not?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it makes you want to continue watching. Like they just dropped. You're like, body swap episode.
That was my exact reaction. I didn't know we were in for a body swap, and when oh my god, I was so excited. It just felt like a jolt of like I don't know. I felt like I took a popped some serotonin. I got a new supplement, and I was like, oh yes, this is television.
Yes. No, the grin on my face when was it Nancy S responded to a question that Nancy was asked. I was like, no, no,
I
we're
know. I was like,
not. Like, are we, is this happening? And then, of course, it was Tunji who nailed it with Bess. Am I dead? Is that my body? And I was like, no, we're actually doing it. And then as soon as we came back from the commercial break, they had all that exposition to catch us up on who was what. I was like, yes, you've got me. Hook, line, and sinker. I'm in for this. And whoa, what an adventure came
the
next.
unraveling of that scene was so like it happened so quickly in my brain. It was like, oh, Nancy and Ace switch bodies. What happened to everybody else? Oh, it's not just Nancy and Ace, it's everybody. And it was like realizing what happened in real time. It was like I loved being on that roller coaster ride of figuring out
Yeah.
like what happened.
It's so fun. These last like 3 episodes, so I'm assuming the fourth one is also going to be fun, but like have been freaking amazing. Like it really is nostalgic. They went into their bag and they were like, we're going to do all the tropes everyone loved when they were watching TV growing
One
up.
after another, we did time travel, we did board game, we did body swap. Who's doing it like this? That's like
No,
3 weeks in a row. Bam, bam, bam.
the standalones are really rocking it out the park. I mean, I feel like it also gave us an opportunity to be able to see the actors be truly challenged in the episode because they had to embody each other's different characters and trying to feel trying to say like, are they really getting it? It's like they kind of are. Oh my God. Like they're Tunji just the whole episode. Well, it just was best from the mannerisms, the like
Having
my
a blast.
right. My favorite is after he finishes his speech and he just sits down and crosses his legs and then he just realizes, oh, I can't do that. Like he immediately he was prim for the majority of the episode and it was like the sweetest. And then Reed, you had pointed out how Ace's run, which is actually exactly like
It was
Nancy's run.
he nailed the Kennedy the how do I want to say like the playfulness that Kennedy puts in Nancy sometimes. Like he really like she does a lot of that when she's on her own, Nancy. So he really did his homework to see how Kennedy acts as Nancy when she's apart from the group. She's a silly little menace. He had that crossbody bag on and the way he like held it and like it was hilarious. It was amazing. Just like the little mannerisms they picked up on each other, like seeing Tunji, I think it was the monologue. Like I could see Madison like saying that the way that he was speaking, it wasn't the way he speaks as Nick. It was the way Madison speaks as Bess. And it was crazy to see like, oh, I can see Madison, but it's tuned. It was a not gonna say what I was gonna say, a mind bleep. But it was like, oh my God, this is how did they I don't know how they did this. And I think one of the first scenes that Kennedy acts as Ace, I was like, oh, Kennedy's been waiting to do this for a hot minute. Like she was like, let me at it. I'm gonna be Alex all day. And she really killed it.
She did. Sorry, you go ahead, Sabrina.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say she played it with such like a dull kind of like because Nancy's always so like active and focused, whereas Ace is always dead chill and relaxed, and she did that so well because we did have some of the larger than life performances around her. Like we said, Tunji's Bess, incredible, whereas she kind of had a more like dull down personality to play, and I think you really got to see it when she went to the yacht club and they had to ask, and it was like, what was the line she said? I wrote it down and I thought it was so much fun. She was like, my name is Nancy Hudson, as it says here on my membership card. It was really like quirky little things like Ace would say to try to convince someone, as though because Ace always feels like he has to justify himself. I thought Kennedy got that brilliant. And then was it when the bodies first swapped? You saw Ace like that there running his fingers through his hair, and she was like, wow, it's really on there, huh? Just going back to like Nancy's obsession with Ace's hair. Loved her. She was so good.
Oh, and then there are two. I really like Alex's interpretation of Nancy trying to know someone on the phone with like the water bottles. Oh, we're taking water. You just see the water just swelling. I was like, that doesn't sound like a wave, but that's totally Nancy. Or it just popped away from my mind. Oh, the way Kennedy was looking up from under her lashes a lot, like because because Alex does that as Ace. Like she looked dipped out. I was like, "Are you looking under your eyelashes at somebody? What is happening right now?" Or to me, their best comedic scene is with Captain Tom and
Mhm.
the lack of being able to do sign language.
Oh, that was amazing. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been to act as each other in scenes together. They were the only ones really with that
Mhm.
issue because the other three, swap between the three of them, but they had to act as each other with each other. That must have been such a challenge. And like I know this is a thing in all body swaps, but for Kennedy to be Alex being Kennedy, it was like she had to interpret playing Nancy, Ace playing Nancy when she's used to playing Nancy. I can't imagine like how the preparation that took. Like how would
No.
Ace play Nancy when I am like I can't like
Mhm.
I'm confused just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, I guess it's another testament to her acting ability and also Alex's acting ability.
Mhm.
Everybody's really, because like you have Leia at the table being Nick, but also having to be George while
Mhm.
George is on a study date. And you can see that it's clearly Nick being George because the amount of touching happens in that date when George doesn't really touch people, it kept throwing me off. He was like, every time we cut to them, like George is touching the date's hand, Cameron's hand. I'm like, George doesn't touch people. You're touching too much.
And it was so nice because you could it set it up really well that you thought that, oh God, something's going to go horribly wrong. And I think they all did really, really well with everything they had to do. You always do see that in body swaps episodes where people are like, if you live a day in my shoes, things could go so badly or so differently. And they all kind of pulled it off in the end, even though like all of the scenarios had disaster written all over them. But yeah, I mean, I thought then Nick playing George came out really, really well in the end. It was really enjoyable. The whole episode, I honestly have very, very little issues with this one. It was one of the best ones because every time it cut between a different arc, I was like, I'm enjoying this, I'm enjoying that. And of course, there was the larger than life sequences, like the Nancy and Ace having to be each other around each other. Like I said, Tunji's best performance. And also, can I just say, I'm going to stop raving about him now, but like the moment, my favorite thing about Tunji's performance was the mannerisms. Because like you guys said, he really nailed Bess. Was it in the first one when he was like when he found out when Bess found out she had to do the speech, he was all like, oh, I should think of some sports metaphors and just really like animate it. And then when George went to walk off, George, where are you taking my body? Exactly. Like that's what best performance of the episode. I was just in awe of it the whole time.
I know. Again, award-winning performances are happening on the CW, whether they get recognized by the Academy or not. I just and Madison was good too because
Mm-hmm.
she's not clunky, right? But like with her having to pretend to have George in her body, it's just stomp, 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 and it's a little gruffer. And even when she's like freaking out in the historical society when those two brothers come, doesn't know what she's doing whatsoever. But then we get like a poignant moment because like that's usually George's character. We get her freaking out about something, then it connects back to her life, and she's like, "My mom heard voices. I mean, my friend's mom heard voices, and I understand how it can ruin lives." And I also like the balance of like supernatural or spiritual things affect people differently, and people embody them differently. Because I did like how the brother was like, "Our parents say it's like a gift from God, but it's not a gift from God." Like to them it is, but he's losing his brother. So no, we are going to this gift is going back to sender, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
they did for them.
It was very poignant, and I think that's one of the reasons I really enjoyed that scene in particular because all the actors were where they needed to be in this episode. Like if this wasn't a body swap, all these actors would have been in those scenarios doing those storylines anyway. Like Nancy and Ace would have been investigating, Nick would have been giving a speech, Bess would have been at the historical society, and George would have been on the study date. But like Reed said, they had to play versions of somebody else playing themselves, and like for George being in I said that right. As George being in Bess's body, that came out, I thought, really, really well because they were quickly like business as usual, get this done and move on. But like we've seen in many body swap episodes, they stop and have a moment and think, oh wait, actually I can do some good here, or actually that's meaningful. Let's help somebody out. And then they did get the curse lifted in the end. I was waiting for something to go horribly wrong because the curse was such a footnote of the episode, and then they had it stored in the jar, and I was like, is it going to come back out? What's going to happen? But happy to report that didn't happen. Other than the worst we got was a little wave on the boat when S sent it over the edge. But yeah, all in all, I just thought all the arcs came together really well. And again, we can go harp on about how great the actors were. They all did incredibly well. But yeah, loved it. I don't know how much more I can rave about how each arc I thought lived up to the expectations really, really well.
And it was an emotional episode too, because I guess you would call Body Swap the A plot, but then there's like the B plot is Nancy dealing with the 1 year anniversary of her mom's death and like keeping that to herself. And we haven't even raved about Kennedy's performance at the end. I guess we'll get to that, but the timeline aside, that storyline, I think it was an important one to get closure for Nancy and to see her growth. And yeah, I loved it.
We've come so far since season one. Like that speech she gives to Nick, George, and Bess would not have happened in season one. She just was not in a position to be able to accept this found family that she was cultivating. And for her to be able to vocalize that, to call them her family and tell them that she loves them. I was like, Nancy, girl, don't wreck me. We still have 10 minutes left. Something could go horribly wrong. but like, it was so stunning. And I thought that's where we were going to like leave it. Because I knew they were going to do the party, because we've seen the pictures, you knew they were going to be at Nancy's house, but even though it wasn't clear what they were going to be there for. But then they gave her another speech in which we don't often get to hear Nancy talk about Kate, like in a big group setting, and for her to be able to like do that and speak so lovely about her mother, and then embody the thing her dad wanted her to do at the beginning of the episode, which she had shunned away from, which was to make it fun, to honor her mom by having a lovely cake fight. I think it was gorgeous. It reminded me about some of the things that I really enjoyed about the earlier seasons of Nancy Drew.
Yeah, the way Kennedy, I'm running out of words to praise her, but just to get specific, like when she started the monologue and her voice was shaky and she cracked and she stumbled a little bit, I was like, oh, you just can't learn that in acting school. Like they just can't teach that. It was, oh my, and then she kept going, and I was like, I just love watching her work in the way that she continues to interpret this character. And to circle back a little bit to add on to her performance in the claw scene before she gives that speech, the brief moment where you see her wrestling with, am I going to do this? Am I going to open up to them? That was amazing too, before she even gets into it, because Nancy's like, oh, if I do this, it's changing everything. She's like, am I ready for that? And I'm glad she did. But yeah, there's a lot of nuance in Kennedy's performances, whether she was Ace or Nancy. And again, I have no words. I'm without words.
And I love when final seasons do full circle moments. I don't know if this was intentional, because I know they weren't treating this as the final season in the first half of it, but I feel like that was such a full circle moment of growth for Nancy. She has had variations of that over the not years. But all in all, I feel like this was probably the most full circle of them all, the most poignant, the most striking, because she finally accepted that she is no longer on her own. This time last year, I still cannot get over that. This time last year, she was on her own. And that was her biggest issue with some of the early episodes. She had all these people wanting to help her, and she was like, you know what, I'm on off into the night to do this on my own. And now she finally realized she almost made that mistake again of thinking that she had to go through this on her own. But in this episode, she actually realized that look at the growth she's underwent in this last year, because all these people are around her, and choosing to lean on them, to be emotional with them. And I think it was also kind of interesting that Ace wasn't in those final scenes, because obviously Nancy had set him up with on the fishing trip with his dad, but she knows how to be vulnerable around Ace now. We've seen that all season, whereas I still think she's coming to terms with being vulnerable around the rest of the Drew crew. And I think it was super important that we saw that. And like, it was just awesome. I just thought it was just such a meaningful moment of growth for the character, and like we said, Kennedy was just phenomenal in it. And I agree, it did remind me of some of the earlier scenes because every time that tough exterior of Nancy would crack a little bit, Kennedy would get the chance to do a very like soft, kind of broken, but also full-hearted kind of performance like that. And I think this was one of the best examples of that where it came together. Um, yeah, just such a moment of growth for the character. And that if the episode had ended there, I would have been very, very fulfilled with that scene because I thought it was so powerful. But of course, then we did get the more light-hearted version of it at the end, which I think is also very, very needed because this wasn't just Nancy's story; it was Carson's story. And even though he didn't have that many scenes, I do like the fact that eventually by the end of it, even Nancy realized that he was going through it too, and that it was still his grief. And so I just thought the fact that it was the Drew crew there to support Nancy, that Ryan was there to support both of them. Yes, he was there for Nancy, but he was also there for Carson. Love the little family they've created on the show.
It's so beautiful that I will have to say justice for Carson because finding out about the year his girlfriend, still on my list. Still, like, you don't need to drink out of the teacup, but you certainly don't need to drink out of the teacup when it hasn't even been a year yet. Like,
yeah,
just a mess.
Yeah. I can't get over that.
So I mean, I'm glad that he's going to grief counseling and has a support group. I'm assuming that he's still doing that. I expected them to have that full circle moment with Nancy where she realized she needed to give her dad what he needed during this day too, because this is affecting both of them. But his face when he's just trying to accept that she doesn't want anybody in the house and have that be okay. And then being able to talk to Ryan about how much of his grief had to be tempered because he had to take care of Nancy and help her through her grief was hurting me. I was like, oh, I love this scene. It's like this little scene stuck in all this chaos, but it's just so nice that like Carson gets to open up about what's going on with him and with someone who he cares about, who cares about him, who is like a neutral party. And then I love I feel like I'm glad that Ryan actually got the words of your family too, because he needed to hear that. I'm like, Ryan, you clearly are. Y'all are like always together. But I mean, I'm glad they told you because he seems like someone who needs to hear it because of the family he grew up in. He knows what family should look like, and he did not get that growing up.
For a show that's not, I wouldn't ever call this a family drama. Family is an enormous theme in every single character arcs. Like everybody has some sort of generational trauma, issue, struggle, something going on with their family. Most of the cases have to deal with family and the trauma within that in this town. And it was a big moment, I think, for Nancy and both of her dads in the theme of family. Like they all needed to, in different ways, needed that. I always forget that family is such a big theme. Like it's just always so present, but this episode is really like, no, family's a big thing in the show. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, it is.
I think that also added the full circle feel because I think family was probably the most at its most important or overarching presence in the show in its first season. And obviously, as shows like that go on, you tend to get more roped into whatever the story of the season is. Whereas now I think we're doing a lot of reflecting, which I think is benefiting the show really, really well. And speaking of Ryan and growth, I feel like it was such a gentle scene, but the fact that he was the one that noticed it was Carson's grief too, I thought that was such a huge, huge moment for him because, like we said, Ryan's not used to being around a real family. Of course, he is. He was surrounded by his blood relatives all his life, but that didn't exactly mean anything. Whereas he got to show the growth that he's gone through, particularly with someone he's grown alongside. I cannot put into words how much I love the Carson and Ryan dynamic. And we haven't got to see it as much because they've either been playing the role of dad one that Nancy needs in this episode or dad two that Nancy needs in that episode. This season, they've kind of been on and off and on and off. But the last couple of episodes, we've seen them spend more time together. And every single one of those scenes, I come away with feeling incredibly fulfilled because it's one of my favorite dynamics on the show. And I don't think I would have said that 2 or 3 seasons ago.
Although I'm keeping my eye on Ryan because he did slip in the glass thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, You're going to make this difficult for us, aren't you?
Yes, which is why, but I'm happy that we're getting to that point though, because the season 4 synopsis was killing me with the Nancy has a connection with someone. They didn't mention the glasses, it's the glasses son, but like an enemy's son, and Ryan's not about it. And it hadn't happened yet. So it should be happening soon. Since he's like, she's like, you can't go to war with the glasses. And he's like, it's already happening.
It does kind of feel like we don't have an awful lot of time left, and there are kind of like two big bads now, because now we know that the Sin Eater is what the Demogorgon is called. And there's a sentence I never thought I'd say. And we find the Black Door, which terrifying scene. Like Nancy sticking around to grab those books. I would have been up that staircase and out of there. But like, we have this going on, and meanwhile there's the glasses. The glasses were kind of that like wild card last season that helped them stop Temperance, and they were like, oh no, wait a minute, maybe you're kind of evil as well. And we've only had one more episode with them since. They're doing an awful lot of building up of them off screen by mentioning them here, mentioning them there. And of course, then there's Tristan, who's just kind of like there for his own purposes. So I don't know how they're going to bring everything together. I do trust the show. I know they'll do a good job of it, but it is going to be an interesting watch, because it definitely feels like the Sin Eater and the history and secrets in Horseshoe Bay is the main storyline this season. So how do the glasses factor into that?
I don't know. It will be interesting though, especially because like they haven't given us a lot on the glasses other than their artifact collectors. We've actually now, I think, have gotten more on people, the rich people or the people in power who in Horseshoe Bay, who are using the Black Door to their advantage. It's like, oh, of course, the wealthy are walking down the steps in the town hall to read a script on a mirror that summons a creature to eat their sins. This metaphor is amazing. Like, it's not enough that you probably have law enforcement in your pocket. You now have to have a supernatural being as well.
I have a brief hot take.
Oh, yes.
That I don't know if that even connects to what you just said, because I was like formulating it in my head. But I'm actually like as like frustrated, I feel like, as we might be, that the glasses haven't really appeared. They've just been like this in the background threat, unseen at the moment. I'm actually like kind of okay with them not having a ton of screen time, and like maybe circling back toward the end, because I feel like, and this is where the hot take portion comes in, I need everybody to stay with me. Everyone stay with me. Last season, we had Temperance just
that's true,
up and down everywhere, and that storyline took a minute to cook. And I feel like we could have done less of Temperance. No shade, no hate. Again, stay with me. I think we're seeing the opposite of last season, and I don't know which one's better or worse, and we won't know until see episode 13. But at the moment, I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of glad, because who knows if we would have gotten this 1, 2, 3 punch of episodes if the glasses were a bigger presence and a bigger like situation. You know what I mean? Is that a controversial hot take? Am I going to get cooked again?
No, I think you're good. I think that makes a lot of sense, actually, because it allows them to set up plot points that perhaps the glasses will actually know more about than Nancy and the rest of the Drew crew. And it allows them to, like you said, to be sort of a threat in the background, rather than mustache twirling villains who do a lot of nothing besides like glare at you at the bagel shop or like
the bagel shop. Not to
see it.
You've been campaigning for the bagel shop.
I was so happy. It's the cutest little storefront too. And then someone online pointed out they also have ice cream. And I was
saw that on the sign. I was like, that's random, but cool. Right? Horseshoe bagels and ice cream.
And it's just like, you know what? That is like, that needs to be the place to be. That is like where, like, Saturday morning bagels for the Drew crew. Like, just get a little small table outside, y'all. Like, argue
I know
about
that's
it.
like the one peaceful place in town.
You know, it just looked so inviting. Like, I was like, I want to hop in the screen and go order myself a bagel.
And Ace's endorsement means so much to me. So like I know it's good, you know.
For sure. But But no, it's because they mentioned the bagel shop so much. I was hoping that we got to see it, and we did, and we got it with the loveliest scene between Tom and Ace, where Tom really just wants to be there for his
Tom
kid.
had Ace gagged.
He did.
Mm,
I was
hmm
like, Tom, you didn't have to do all that. It really came for him. I loved it, but I was like, oh.
Tom was a dad on a mission. He's like, look, I know something's not right with you, and I know it has to do with Nancy. You don't have to talk about all of it, but I think we should talk about it so you
What
can
was
just
that
get it off the
face he
chest.
made?
Oh, the
Oh, he
sad
was like,
face.
he was like, oh, oh.
And I think one of the last times we saw him in like a significant presence was the time he threw Ace out.
Mhm.
And I don't even mind that they had all of that take place off screen because I'm so happy we got to see the endearing relationship between them one or two more times. And like Reed said, he came for Ace, he absolutely did. But like it was loving, like, and I think I love their bond so much. I hope that's not the last to be see of them this season because I could watch a whole episode with the two of them just in it.
I don't know. It felt a lot like closure.
Yeah, very
Mhm.
much so.
And I think that was a big thing Ace had to learn apart from any relationship thing. What he took away from this story with Nancy is to appreciate his dad while he's here.
Mhm.
And as much as he might be frustrated with these fishing trips, or as much as he doesn't want to do them, or whatever, it's important to, cherish those moments because they won't last forever. And all you have is your memories. And I think that was what Ace took away from that. That was the big thing, I think, from the phone call. That was kind of, well, no, he did say it. I was going to say it was unspoken, but he said it. He
Yeah.
said, thank you for making me go.
I didn't think we were gonna get that phone call, by the way.
I
It
know. I
threw
thought it was
me.
going to end after the cake thing. And I was like, wait,
Yeah,
no, that's not how the show goes.
we
There's
had the
always something
gentle fade.
ominous.
Yeah, we had the gentle fade out, and I thought, oh, that's a nice way to end the episode. But then the ending wasn't that ominous. It didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. But I guess that was just all done so that we could have that phone call between Nancy and S. And it was a nice way of like kind of wrapping up this episode's storyline because I suppose this is where we head into the next conversation now. I will say I really, really enjoyed Nancy and S in this episode, and here's why. The reason I loved watching them grow closer over the year is because of the simple fact that there were these two unusual parallels that worked very well together, like detectives. They were their confidants, even though they didn't kind of know it at the time. And we got to see that one more time. We got to see them be detectives. Yes, there was the hilarious trope of the fact that they were in each other's bodies and they had to learn how the other half lived for a whole day and help each other out. But generally, we just got to see them. They were investigating the black door and they got the answers. And I thought that worked really well. And it's nice to see them employing the old techniques to further their new love story arc because we've kind of gotten lost in Destiny at Written in the Stars and all of that over the last couple of weeks. Whereas this was good old fashioned Ness doing what Ness does and reminding us why we fell in love with them and why they maybe fell in love with each other. That I could not have asked for more from this episode. This is my favorite Ness episode of the season so far.
Ooh,
True, true.
mic drop.
Nice. I do think we had some really nice moments between them. Kind of being able to communicate better because they were forced to be around each other because they had to work with one another. There were like two things that I thought were weird though. I don't know why we're saying things like we've been trying to stay apart, and I was like, no. You haven't been. You have scenes every episode, and which of course might go back to the timeline thing, where for us it's feeling like it's days,
Mm-hmm.
or like perhaps even weeks. And they're like, no, it's been like 3 days. I was like, well, then they haven't been trying to stay apart from one another. But and then they bring the worst out in each other. The feeling that I was afraid we were gonna bring up the worst out in each other. And I was like, you generally don't do that. Even when y'all were fighting, you were still fighting while communicating. Like it wasn't like it broke down into name calling or taking pot shots. It's just, hurt, which you're allowed to express hurt. I mean, I guess if avoidance counts, because Nancy was avoiding Ace in one of the episodes and he didn't like that. He wanted them to like try to be friends again. And she's like, I don't know how to be friends with you right now because, you rejected me. But that I wasn't really feeling. I feel like that wasn't the narrative that they had been telling us. But my God, the golden hour shot. Like when they're both
Yeah.
back in their bodies, I was like, they hit that golden hour. Like, so sorry to all the boys too. which y'all missed that golden hour by a long shot. But they, like Nancy Drew, they hit it. And it was like, I think one of the most gorgeous scenes I've seen on Nancy Drew, because it was really just beautiful. And them being able to connect with one another. I think my favorite small nice moment of this episode is when Ace as Nancy gives Nancy as Ace the locket, because he understands how important it is to her. And though she's not in her own body, she should be able to wear the locket that symbolizes both of her mothers. And I thought that was like a beautiful way of showcasing how much he knows her and how much it would bother her not to be able to have that piece of her mom's on her.
And then the close-up of him giving it to her back, golden hour.
Yes. They were like, we're going to show you what we can do with golden hour. We truly are going to show you.
I will say though, I think those two, like the worst in each other and the staying away from each other, I heard it and I was like, yeah, it's
You tossed it.
it's like the lowest infraction, I think.
Yeah,
I was like I can see it if I really like dig in, but I'm like, it seemed like a simple way to water down, or like in the way that these shows do, they try to boil down the character beats of an episode down to a simple thing, and I could see that's what they were trying to do. And even if it didn't like connect in a way that I was like, yeah, that's what I saw was happening this whole episode, I was like, I feel like you might have missed it by like a millimeter, but whatever, I'll let you have this one. If that's how Nancy and Ace feel, that's how you're telling me they feel, I can do a little bit of math in my head to make it work, but I'm fine. It's fine, whatever. I'm not gonna get too in the weeds about that one. I can agree with you, and I can also see like the other side where I'm like, sure, that was a fear Ace had, and Nancy's telling herself that she was trying to avoid Ace emotionally. I don't know, physically, you're right. Physically, it's like we've seen it. Maybe that's where that comes in. She had been trying to like not be near him, and then somehow they were always around each other. But yeah, I was like, whatever, I ignore. I pretend I do not see.
It does create emotional resonance though, because it allows for that phone call to be more weighty. After having spent time together all episode. I think that they both really needed to hear how important they are to one another. I believe Nancy said that she wouldn't be happy without Ace in her life. And what did Ace said? Something similar, but he didn't use the word happy. I just can't remember the full line.
Someone will tell us.
Yes.
Yeah. It was very similar. I remember the same thing. Just don't remember the word.
But it was nice that they were able to, after all of the well of emotion that we've been going through for a good portion of the season, that they were able to say something very heartfelt without, the baggage of them not going forward with their relationship.
I think they feel really safe with each other. And I don't know which one, maybe both, but they wanted to be able to not feel that. And I think maybe being with each other in this kind of way in this episode was kind of like, oh crap, yeah, we do feel safe around each other, and it feels good and it feels right.
In your rule of fourths for the season, Reed, I think we said this would be the distraction kind of era where they like move on from each other. We thought maybe Tristan would be more involved in that, but it turns out they're just distracting all of us from the storyline just with
these. He's been in like 2 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. They're just distracting all of us with the storyline with these random standalone episodes, and they're absolutely incredible. I love it when they do it. I hope we get at least one more. But now that we're in the distraction era or whatever, I feel like we're heading into the where they move back towards each other kind of era, in that they're not together, but they figured out that they're going to get through this problem or this like patch together rather than going their separate ways. And like we said, they've been going their separate ways for 2 or 3 episodes, and like this side by side in almost every single episode, it hasn't exactly worked out. So maybe that's the point of the lesson here, that they always do find their way back to each other. But I'm looking forward to them just sharing more scenes together without the like weight of that conflict. Of course, they'll try to figure it out as we head towards the end of the season, but watching them argue with each other back and forth hasn't exactly been the most fun experience. So I just hope we get to see more of them as parallels again.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
to your point, I feel like to me, this episode wasn't like a romantic
Hmm.
building block. It felt more like getting them to a place like an understanding emotionally to where they can be in the same room and feel okay about being in the same room without any extra baggage. Like, I don't, maybe I read it wrong, but it didn't feel like romantic. Like, I'm not like, oh, it's gonna happen next episode. They're gonna like start holding hands and try to break the curse again. Like, I just feel like, oh, okay, they got to a place and understanding with each other.
Hmm.
And maybe that's what they needed to get to this whole time, but they were trying to do different things.
Well, to me, it came off like post breakup between two people who realize they really want to be in each other's lives, so they have to figure out how to be friends again.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Like, and that's, I mean, it very much felt like that to me. Like, I didn't get romance from it either, because I think both of them mentioned, you can't seem to stay away from one another, and I was like, yes, because you have a base of friendship. Like, it's not, they never were a relationship that had started from simply attraction. So you were going to want each other to be around. You're going to want to help each other. You're going to miss each other when you're around each other, because he was like, you were both there in each other's lives as friends first. So I think that's where we are. I think we're going to try to be friends again, despite our feelings, which, I mean, tracks, because Ace is a part of the Joker. It's not like they can just remove him. He's
Mhm.
he's not a love interest who can just be shunted to the side for 4 episodes and then come back like Tristan.
That would have been a
um,
funny episode though if Ace was like, I'm out. I can't like be involved in the group, and they would try to like welcome in some new person from the morgue and it just like was not working. That would have been a funny episode. They're
yes.
like, no, Ace, we need you.
That would be really funny. We still have a lot of episodes left, so we have no idea if that would happen. It's like,
I think they missed the on ramp if they were going to tell that story. But yeah, I do have to say like a lot can happen in 5 episodes, so I don't think anybody should be concerned. There's still a path to everything that could happen. Like 5 episodes is a
oh,
lot.
yeah, we're not saying it's not endgame. I just want to be very clear. We're saying we're in
Yeah.
the post breakup friendship part.
I'm trying to avoid what people are saying
Mhm.
personally. I'll leave that there. So I don't know what the fears are, but just to quell any fears, I feel like I've been the one for Nancy to be like, we have time. And I
Mhm.
know it feels like we're running out of time, and we are, but a lot can happen. And
Yeah.
maybe a lot can happen, and it'll feel like, oh, that was quick. Because in 90210, in the series finale, they just randomly put Adriana and Naveed back together after it was a disaster episode. There was like they went to a concert. It was a whole thing. There was an explosion, and they spent the series finale together. And granted, 90210 found out 5 minutes before filming the series finale that it was the series finale, so they had to, quickly lay some foundation for everything to be final. That's not the case here, but I'm just saying things can happen quickly, and whether they fully work or not is, to be seen. I don't think it's going to be as like, oh, we're just going to shove George and Nick together in the series finale and decide they get back together. I think if that's going to happen, it would be built a little bit more. But anyway, I rambled. Just that's all to say. There's still time. Like there's a
Hmm.
lot can happen in 5 episodes, especially in this show.
Yes, well, just a reminder, for I think that's the end of season 1. Owen and Nancy get together at the end of the penultimate episode, and then this man dies in the next episode after Nancy was going to be going to Paris with him.
I don't
So,
mean to laugh. Rest in peace, Owen. Rest
but
in peace.
it does move fast. So anyone who's concerned, that's just a reminder. Like, even if we got 2 episodes to go, that doesn't mean that in the penultimate episode, they don't just decide to do a storyline that makes them question their lives and then they're back together and we break the curse in the finale and then we bought a ticket to Paris. It can still happen.
And to quote Fran, just steal a phrase from Fran Drescher, I would bet dollars for donuts we're getting a flash forward at some point
Mm,
in the series finale.
Mm.
Like
mhm.
I would bet money. And oh my God, this episode especially, like I'm thinking about like how is this going to end? Like that's a thought that keeps coming into my head as we get closer to the end. And I'm like, I want the last shot not to be like a cliffhanger, but to be like a seed of like she's going to continue to be entrenched in the supernatural. Like I want the last shot to be like a or something juicy. Like I
Yes.
want the last shot to be something not like oh, a marriage or like everything's wrapped up in a bow. That'd be cute too, I guess. I don't know. But I just like I don't need like the Tom Swift like
Mhm.
enormous cliffhanger. I just want to know that like, oh, this train's gonna keep moving, whether it's 5 years in the future or like the next day.
Yeah,
You want
There's
yeah,
no
season
ending.
two, and was that is that season two, episode one's ending? Whichever one where Nancy's walking, and then she turns and she faces the camera
yes,
like something
Yeah.
happened. That
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yes.
ending.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, something that like in the vein of like the Batwoman season 3 ending, I think would be good. Something like everybody is in a happy place, but the adventures will still continue off screen. There's always going to be a new mystery that needs solved, or a new bad guy that needs taken down, or a new supernatural entity that Bess needs to exorcise. There's always going to be something there, and I hope that because like. We love these characters so much. I hate the fact that this is only supposed to have been a year of their lives. It would have been so much more fulfilling if it was 4 years. So I hope that
Or
they
even
get many more
two.
years.
Each season
Yeah,
was like a half
yeah.
of a year.
So it would be so much more fulfilling if we knew that they get to do this for years in the future, even when they do get their iconic careers and they do whatever it is they want to do with their lives, that they're still sitting there solving mysteries on the side. Of course, it'll be Nancy's main outlook, but you know what I mean? I hope that Nancy Drew, the adventures will continue for many more years off screen. I think that would be the perfect ending for a show like this.
I
Even the
think
season
so.
3 finale, where like they showed people that the rest of the Drew crew settling into different outlets, and then Nancy's in her, she's started her business, and she's like, "Where are the bodies?" Like that's like it
Mm-hmm.
might be too much of a cliffhanger, but it's like the kind of ending where it's like, oh, we see them kind of like being okay, and then the supernatural's still gonna like come up behind them and say boo.
It's gonna be
Perfect.
so fun though. They do seem to be laying the track for that because like Nick and Bess, because Nick has to always have a business, is like they're going to do. I'm calling it a nonprofit, but so you have the basic Hershey Bay Historical Society, and then you have the shadowy secret one, which presumably is going to be in Icarus Hall by the end of the
Mm.
show,
That would
because
be
that makes the most sense
interesting.
to me. Because Nancy doesn't need to live in the Icarus Hall by herself. Go get a house. Go get a real house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
so it being over their secret society, their secret like paranormal investigators agency being at Icarus Hall just makes the most sense. Like move the whole collection from Hershey Bay Historical Society to that building,
Yeah.
and
Can
then keep
someone
things
tell me
high.
where Bess is living? Because this is a question I've had all season, and I'm confused. Where
I
is
think it's
Bess
this
living?
historical society because it's a house. So I think she's living upstairs.
I think so. I think they made
Yeah.
a joke about that at one point.
Well, I would like to see it.
Yeah. It would be nice. But I also feel like, wait a second. They kept her from being able to go into the historical society at one point. So that means she was houseless.
Oh,
Did not know she lives there?
they didn't think that one through.
See, I just want to know where she's living because that's always been like she lived in a van in season 1, and then she lives with
Mhm.
Nancy, and I'm like, where's Bess living? I also remember during this episode she has a girlfriend that we haven't seen.
Oh, did she mention Addie? Because I didn't.
No, she didn't.
No.
I just remembered.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, I missed that. What's
No,
Addie
she did not
doing?
mention her. I was just like, oh, that's right. Bess has a girlfriend. Okay, move on.
Not everyone getting new love interest this season, and like Bess is the longest lasting relationship of the bunch, and nothing. Crumbs. There's
I am
crumbs even too
emotionally
much.
unavailable for whatever's happening with George and the study partner, by the way.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Like, have your fun, like, do your little worksheets together, but like, I'm emotionally unavailable. I can't. No
No.
investments to be
The
made.
key takeaway there was just Nick realizing that, like, oh, dude actually is okay. You know what? I'll set this
Yeah.
up for her. And I was like, you're still touching him too much, but
I would
okay.
love best or not best. Oh my gosh, I'm like all over the place with this body swap episode. George, go on a few dates and realize like, oh, he's like a law student like me. Is this what I want? No, I want George or Nick. I can't get all the names. It's all over the place. Like I could see that arc happening, and maybe that's what I want from it. I don't know. I just like I'm not getting invested. I'm not.
Mhm.
Mhm.
No, I can't do that.
I will say Phantom's confusing me though. I didn't expect Nick to be like him saying, I know you better than anyone, like totally fine, checks out. But like the I'm gonna be your wingman. I was like, we're in a comfortable spot. How long has it been since y'all broke off the engagement? We're comfortable being
5 days
wingman?
probably.
Confusion.
It is like, oh, okay, you're her wingman now, and she's like excited that you would do that for her. And I just feel like y'all been broken up for a solid year at this point. If we're okay doing that for her, but maybe he's
Yeah.
just that settled in his relationship with Jade.
it's a lot really fast. No judgment, but you have to like stop and think to really get on the same level and page with them to be like, where were we? Where are we at now? Um, but yeah,
Yeah, but I did like it's not toxic, no toxic masculinity there.
no,
None at all.
no,
Just a shade of jealousy at first, and then
yeah.
he took himself out of it and did something he thought would benefit her.
Nick continues to be at the same simultaneously the dad of the group and also baby girl.
It's very true.
Like it's his sweet spot right there.
Yes.
When Nancy did her monologue and he immediately stood up at the claw, I was like, I love you. I love you so much.
And then the shoulder grab, like the squeeze, like, yes, you're family. Like, we're family. I'm like, yes, you are. You are. I love this little group. They're just so amazing. I also like that he stood up to Miss Ma'am, who someone was like, I don't believe she's actually from this town. I was like, I don't believe she's actually from Horseshoe Bay either. But
starting a rumor she's the Sin Eater.
Yes. Accuse her, no evidence, lock her away.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Tristan beating these allegations.
Yes. But she's really, it is interesting that they are sort of, I would say this is probably like an E plot, maybe a D plot, that she is a representation of what's going on in America right now when it comes to censorship and concerned parents who are like just sending in different things about talking points about books that shouldn't be in libraries or books that shouldn't be available or accessed at schools. That's who she is in a nutshell, down to the crisis acting. Like, she didn't even mention what she's concerned about as a parent who, what is it? Parents who believe in historical truths or something like that. She did like what exactly is wrong with historical society?
What did she call Bess? She was throwing words at our girl Bess, and I was like, hold me back.
Extremist.
Hold me back.
She called her an extremist. And I was like,
you're the extremist lady.
Yeah, I was like, and no one pushed back on that. Like in the audience, like they were like clapping for the lady to be there, and I was
she
like,
she said it to Bess.
I know, and Bess like the immediately accent was there.
You don't mess with Bess.
No, I mean, just like, and Bess is the sweetest, and this lady knows nothing about her. I highly doubt she knows anything about what's going on at the Historical Society.
But how are you born and raised in Horseshoe Bay and you're not getting a whiff of the weirdness that's happening in town? Like, wake up and smell the ghost, lady. It's here and it's happening.
All the time. Like, sure, y'all don't need to pop up at the council meeting like the man who was like, the what did he say? The tidal wave was based on a supernatural thing. Like, it was, but you need to shh.
Like, how are you from a town where you have like a ritual about the bucket of blood kicking things over, and you're just gonna like be barking at a meeting about Bess? I don't like it. I don't like her.
Like, that's why I don't believe she actually lives here. Like, I'm like, I don't think, because that's like the MO of groups like this. A lot of them don't actually come from the counties that they're meddling in.
No, I'm foil hat on. She's the Sin Eater because she's like, oh, look at everything else. Don't look at me. I'm the Sin Eater. Like, oh, everybody. Like, yeah, she's trying to. What's that called? I don't know what it's called. I don't know other words like that. But like, she's trying to like look over there, not at me.
Oh, a smokescreen?
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, that's Exhibit B right now. So she has 2 exhibits against her. And Exhibit C, but we just don't like her. That's totally can be
number one.
Like, reasons why this woman is the Sin Eater. A, B, C. We don't like her.
But like Nick really was like very. So first of all, why are you standing in front of his car? I did not like that. Where she's just waiting for him. But also for him to be like, so I decided to turn down the council seat because I'm going to make sure people like you can't interfere with inclusion in this town. I'm like, you go, mayor. One day you'll be mayor of Horseshoe Bay. Or wait, actually, will he be able to? You know, but it's not the last we've seen of her. Mm-mm.
No, but the look on her face after he put her in her place, so rewarding. Yeah, it's what she deserved. She tracked all the way out of the claw for no reason, just to get all of her insults handed back to her. It's what she deserved.
She had a hobby.
Yeah.
You know? A job.
I have one more thing to praise that I've been thinking about. I'm constantly like on objectification watch, it seems like, in the show. I don't know why, but something that I thought about that wasn't really a thought until we were talking about it, like the body swap plot. There was no weirdness about being in each other's bodies. No one was like, oh, like no one said anything weird. And I'm just like thankful because as much as it reminded me of like Scooby-Doo, the live action movie that we grew up with, I think there was some weirdness about that. There's always something about when you're in the opposite sex, you make some sort of reference to the body parts. And I'm like, I'm so glad that was not included in the show. And it continues to be a shining example of just telling the story. Just tell your story. And they did. And I didn't want to end the episode without praising that, because I think sometimes these shows need to be praised for doing the bare minimum, which is not being weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is lovely though, because like even when they were commenting, on being in a different body, it was very neutral. It's like, I just got shorter. Or it's just the touching of the hair. Like, it really is right there. My goodness. Or when Bess was like feeling Nick's muscles, that was about her suddenly having musculature. And then Nick got to be like, yeah, that's CrossFit. twice a week. Or even when Ace as Nancy's hair gets adjusted, it's Nancy adjusting her own hair rather than him looking in the mirror and trying to primp her, which would be weird. So it's just the choices they make all the time to make sure that all the characters have their own bodily autonomy, and that the gaze for the audience isn't like objectifying. I love when you praise them for it, because they do deserve to be praised for it. A lot of shows, they love a moment in which they can exploit like how characters are feeling about each other's bodies, or
and especially women,
to show it. Yeah. So there was none of that.
Completely avoided it. Very refreshing.
I love this show for that, for many reasons, but that reason in particular, that they're not trying to make anybody feel unsafe in the five main characters. Like I don't know. I just love there's many things to praise about the show and this episode, but I wanted to make sure to call that out because it's really important.
I want to shout out real quickly, and this is not about what you had just mentioned, Reed, but the scene in which Tom and Ace are on the boat, it's clearly stage work. And I'm like, can we bring that back? Because everyone wants to just be like scheduling time to actually be out on the ocean. And I'm just like, if y'all crying about budgets, this is why we don't need to do that anymore. Put them on a stage, fill it a little bit with water, and have someone in the back just toss a bucket over like, so that we can pretend a wave hit it. I think we need to get back to that when it comes to television. I think everyone's just gotten so used to the budgets they've been given that they want to do just something spectacular out on the ocean or anywhere you'd actually be on a body of water. It's like, it's not necessary. If we broke, we broke. So just like be but there.
Sometimes they make it look so good. Like I remember finding out that the lifeguard stand in the OC was on a soundstage, and I was like, you mean they weren't really on a beach? Like literally like 10 years after I'd been watching the show, I found out that it was on a stage and not on an actual beach. Maybe they did do some they did, I think, establishing shots on the beach, but like close up, they didn't have those kids out on a beach at 9 p.m. filming. Like I don't know why I didn't put that together, but they can make it look so, that's TV magic. And I think, not to circle all the way back to our accidental rant from the top of the pod, but like sometimes realism can take away from the magic of TV when everything looks like, oh, you put Jennifer Garner on a boat in the middle of the lake. Not that happened in the last thing you told me. That's just the first thing that came to mind. But like, and I know they do that in a lot of, and even in Nancy Drew, they're on a beach calling for the Igleika. But sometimes I think the three of us are advocates for a little bit of cheese and corniness and TV magic.
And sometimes
keep the green screens. Save luck.
Yeah, keeping it simple sometimes works best. I know at first I was like, why are they going out fishing in Horseshoe Bay of all places in the dark this late at night? Yeah, exactly. But I mean, now I know why exactly that bad choice was made, and I mean it worked. Smoke and mirrors. It was a nice little scene the episode couldn't have done without, and there was no need to overly complicate things with a huge expansive lake or with bad CGI. It was just exactly what it needed to be, and it worked like a dream.
Although, Ace, the next time you're dumping a cursed jar into the ocean, you toss it out a little.
You just dropped it. But you know what? Made a memory.
He did. And a very nice
There we
one
go.
too.
Yeah.
Mhm. I feel like that's a good place to end it though.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank y'all for listening and for watching Where the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Bye y'all.